Hello everyone, welcome to yet another day in this Decline Decade, the decade where things are only going to get worse before they get better. And we are on a train where I am starting to feel quite vindicated, I would say. It's not much, but it's definitely a start. So UK economy shrinks in January with GDP down 0.1%. You might notice throughout this video, I'm not exactly smug about being vindicated here. I'm happy about it, don't get me wrong. However, I'd rather the UK economy wasn't shrinking, to be quite honest with you. But alas, this was entirely predictable. You can tell, because I predicted it. Surprise fall in GDP was driven by slowdown in manufacturing and construction, which I'll get into, but that is actually highly embarrassing for this particular government with this budget. So the UK economy contracted unexpectedly, a common theme obviously whenever the economy shrinks, after pretty much everyone on the right says it will shrink, is that it's apparently unexpected. Again, part of the reason I went right wing is because every time something unexpected happened, literally the entire right wing were expecting it. Illustrating the challenging backdrop for Rachel Reeves' spring statement later this month. I am telling you now, there will be tax rises along with budget cuts. It's going to be actual austerity rather than the fake austerity we got under the Tories. I am expecting genuinely there to be actual real term cuts in the public sector in terms of real spending. And I think that's going to be quite devastating for everyone who voted Labour and actually expected, well, a miracle, let's say. Gross domestic product decreased by 0.1% in the month to January, down from growth of 0.4% in December, the Office for National Statistics said on Friday. Analysts have expected the economy to expand by 0.1%. Yes, well, as Michael Gove famously put it, people are fed up with experts getting it wrong all the time, aren't they? They're still getting it wrong all the time. It's nearly a decade later from when he said that, and people are still shocked that people agree with him. There was a steep 0.9% drop in the output of production sector, dragged overall growth lower. Again, that is pretty devastating, because, frankly, an awful lot of Labour's point, and a lot of Labour activists say, oh, Margaret Thatcher deindustrialised, it was awful, look how much deindustrialisation happened under Margaret Thatcher. It's not true, by the way. Deindustrialisation happened much more under successive Labour governments, especially under Tony Blair. And given this is largely a Blairite government, it should not be shocking then that we get even less production in our economy. But either way, if industrialisation or reindustrialisation was the point of this Labour government, this is the exact opposite of them doing that. Having it go down by an entire percent in a month is close to free fall. We'll have to see if these trends continue. However, my goodness, 1 month, nearly a percentage drop, that is just horrendous. Service output increased by 0.1% over the month after rising 0.4% in December, so a little bit of a decrease in growth there, but you're always going to expect services to be pretty good in Britain because they consume relatively low energy, which is the massive bottleneck in Britain. Our energy prices are just ridiculous. And it's also because London's wealth is largely built upon service industries, which is fine. It's just a bit of a problem that the service industry is the only one that can grow, because as we can see, construction activity fell by 0.2%. I want to make it clear, Labour's big thing was about build, build houses, build infrastructure. How do they promise all that and make the construction industry fall? Now, that is the most embarrassing part. It's not quite the 0.9% in production. However, construction actually relies on production so that it can have the goods for the actual construction. This is embarrassing. This is devastating, in fact. Liz McKeown, Director of Economic Statistics at the ONS, said the fall in January was driven by a notable slowdown in manufacturing, with oil and gas extraction and construction also having weak months. Wow, I'm in shock. I am in shock that oil and gas extraction has slowed down. Why would that happen? However, services continued to grow in January, led by a strong month for retail, especially food stores, as people ate and drank at home more. That's not good. That's not good at all. Eating and drinking at home more means they're going out less. That's going to mean weaker high streets, for God's sake. Since the budget in October, economic growth has undershot expectations. Not for me. Likely forcing the Chancellor to cut government spending at the spring statement on March 26th to stay within her fiscal rules. she is considering trimming welfare expenditure as the government is under pressure to increase defence spending after Trump signalled he intends to roll back military support for Europe. Oh, that's going to be a great one as well. Maybe I was wrong about public spending. Maybe they're going to do what the Tories do instead of sending everything they cut to the NHS. They're going to send everything they cut to defence, which I do actually prefer. Reeves stated, "The world has changed and across the globe we are feeling the consequences. That's why we are going further and faster to protect our country, reform," oh look at that, "our public services and kickstart economic growth to deliver our plan for change." I did point out in yesterday's video an awful lot of the cuts that they are announcing, largely in line with what Reform are promising, so you may as well have just voted for them. Yael Selfin, chief economist at KPMG, said, "The upcoming spring statement is unlikely to deliver additional financial stimulus for the UK economy. The sluggish growth outlook alongside competing spending pressures will force the Chancellor to tighten purse strings." Oh dear. I cannot wait to ask people who voted Labour if this is what they expected or wanted, because I'm telling you now, this is what I told them would happen. This was entirely predictable. I predicted it. This is unbelievable. Why don't people listen to me more? In further economic news, the Bank of England is expected to keep interest rates unchanged next week at 4.3% after inflation climbed to 3% in January. Their target was 2%. Throughout the budget, they were saying, GDP will grow 1.8%, something like that as well. That's not going to happen if it starts shrinking less than 6 months after the budget, is it? However, growth had exceeded the central bank's expectation at the end of last year, which I said this when Millet got in as well. You can't really see the consequence of a budget until about 6 months after it's been introduced, or the policies start getting rolled out. And obviously, any time after April, that's when you can really start judging it, as that's when it's the start of a new financial year. And mostly when budget policy is actually implemented. We're not even there yet, and we're already shrinking. On Thursday, the ONS delayed the release of its monthly trade statistics, which are usually released alongside its GDP estimate, owing to data collection errors. The ONS, under the Tories, moved from London to Newport in South Wales in an attempt to try and level up other parts of the country. But what ended up happening instead is, effectively, the ONS couldn't really get talent, because everyone wants to move to London because it's the only place you can really go if you want to make a mint. So, what I'm basically saying there is that the ONS does not have as talented people as it should. The Statistics Agency has also been criticised for allowing responses to a survey that generates its monthly labour market data to collapse. Oh. The pound weakened by 0.1% against the dollar and was broadly flat against the euro after the GDP figures were released. So, it can't be that unexpected then. Anyway, in other news today, Rachel Reeves faces cabinet backlash over welfare reform. The Chancellor is attempting to balance the books, but plans to cut public spending and sickness benefits have caused alarm. I went through this yesterday, but my God, we need to go through it again. The Chancellor will either need to increase tax or cut public spending in an attempt to fill a 20 billion so-called black hole caused by anemic growth rates. Again, the 22 billion black hole they said they inherited from the Tories already, an awful lot of that, if you actually look into the statistics, was their own doing via public sector pay rises and things like that. And now it turns out there's a further 20 billion. So far, Labour's spending has put them in total a 34 billion pound black hole, via my estimates anyway. On Tuesday, the Prime Minister secured an agreement from Cabinet that Labour would stick to its ironclad fiscal rules as Reeves attempts to balance the books before her spring statement. It probably should have been noted more, but it was pretty obvious that those fiscal rules were going to inevitably lead to austerity. And I mean genuine austerity, by the way. I do not mean the fake one that the Tories did, in terms of they probably will actually have to do budget cuts properly, not like the Tories, who kept overall spending up and up and up. The government will announce about £5 billion worth of cuts to sickness and disability benefits next week in an attempt to overhaul the broken welfare system. Sir Keir Starmer said the welfare bill was going through the roof and insisted that reforms were needed to stop people being stuck in the world of benefits and get them into work. I do agree. At the Cabinet meeting, first reported by Bloomberg, ministers voiced concerns about the scale of welfare cuts and said it would be difficult to sell to Labour MPs because, of course, Labour MPs are completely fine with giving benefits to people who just don't feel like working, God bless them. They pointed to cuts to unprotected departments, which have been asked to model spending reductions of 11% a year. Oof. Starmer is said to have allowed the meeting to go on for longer because many ministers wanted to have their say. The PM is attempting to quell criticism of the reforms, oh, there's that word again, which will require the long-term sick to prepare for work and cut benefits for many sick and disabled people. Figures released on Thursday show 1.8 million people on the highest level of incapacity benefits with no requirement to prepare for work, including 160,000 people aged 16 to 24. Starmer said the welfare system can't be defended on economic terms or moral terms, and it was shocking that young people were discouraged from seeking work by a system that paid those deemed unfit for work double the job seekers' allowance. Not only that, but I think the statistic is something like... Well, I know more people aged between... I think it's either 18 and 30 or 18 and 25, I can't remember. But there are more people in that age bracket who I think are on out-of-work benefits or deemed unfit to work than people aged over 60 or between 60 and the retirement age, which is just absurd. Like, we have literally made a generation of people that don't feel like they have to work, and it's largely because of decades of government policy. These people probably would work, frankly, if they were forced to by necessity, in that, well, they have to eat. Otherwise, yeah, why wouldn't they just live on benefits if it's easier to get and gives them way more free time? Makes sense. Starmer said, it's set up in such a way that if you take a risk of coming off benefits and into work and it doesn't work out for you, you end up worse off than when you started. This is true because it can actually take, in my experience, well, in people in my family's experience, yes, it can take years to get on PIP. Maybe not years, maybe months is more accurate, but I've known people where it's taken over a year to actually get on PIP. It's so tragic that people who are just starting their journey in life are already stuck in a system that won't let them get their way where they need to be. He added, we must support those that need support, but equally we must help those who want to get back to work. Yeah, absolutely. There's absolutely no point paying people benefits to, well, not get life skills that will be useful for work. But we've managed to do that with an awful lot of people under 30, which is when you need to develop these skills. Well, you need to go into overdrive developing these skills, and a lot of people aren't. It's not good. Mental health problems are cited by 2/3 of those claiming universal credit health benefits, which are paid to 2.5 million people, up 500,000 in a year, and more than 5 times the pre-pandemic figure. Well, some of the change is the result of claimants moving from older benefits. Liz Kendall, the Work and Pension Secretary, said that the rise showed they need to fix the broken benefit system. She added millions of people have been locked out of work by a failing welfare system which abandons people, when we know there are at least 200,000 people who want to work and are crying out for the right support. It's possible, I suppose, but I always get very sceptical with this claim that all these people on benefits necessarily want to work. People only want to work when they want more money to have a better lifestyle. It's another thing to point out here. People that are on benefits, typically if they want to work, they'll be doing a cash-in-hand job. And benefits on top of cash-in-hand jobs that they don't actually pay any tax for, that gives them an income that's probably above that of your average graduate. The incentives are so wonky that effectively going through life on the railroads that are put toward you, by the time you're 11 or whatever, it turns out that going down that railroad probably isn't actually the best thing you can do in life, when it probably actually should be, and obviously should be there for people who can achieve that sort of thing. However, some Labour MPs are increasingly unhappy about making it harder to claim disability benefits. Separate payments are not linked to work. Many people claim both incapacity and disability benefits, and it has not previously been known how many people are claiming sickness benefits of any kind. Oh my god. I mean, it makes sense. If you've got incapacity benefits, you probably qualify for disability benefits, but wouldn't you want them under the same umbrella anyway? If you're to the point of being incapacitated, how is that not just part of disability benefits, but obviously the very most that you can earn, the very much that you can get given from that? Also, how do we not know how many people are on benefits? You would have thought that was something that the Department for Work and Pensions just sort of knows from the amount of money that they give out, but oh well. Starmer pointed out that sickness benefits cost for working age adults were projected to rise to $70 billion by the end of the decade. He added, that's a third of the cost of the NHS. That's more than the Home Office on our prisons combined. now we're making choices here. Yeah, I mean, the benefit cost is already absolutely massive. I mean, as I keep saying, our most expensive public service is the NHS. The second is redistribution in terms of public pensions, and the third is redistribution in terms of public benefits to adults and children. You could include the other category in there, which I think is even bigger than the NHS, but that's obviously going to be made up of an awful lot of smaller things. But on the other hand, it would also be a very good way to actually hide really big costs for things that people would not like. So it's always worth bearing that in mind. Anyway, if you want some good news about all this, UK Treasury weighs up funding cuts at GB Energy and blow to end Miliband. Government considering such a move over state-owned firm set up by Labour in June's spending review, says report. I've always been a massive critic of GB Energy, because an awful lot of it, I think it was part of this National Wealth Fund policy as well, but effectively all it was there for was to expand solar panel and wind energy projects, basically via directing not only public funds but also private funds as well. And I genuinely think part of the issue here is that private funds simply don't want to invest into it. Again, they're obviously only going to do it with subsidies. I get the feeling that the government can no longer afford those subsidies, and now private investors are thinking of going elsewhere. On the other hand, that might be speculation, and the article is going to go into detail, so why not just read it? Let's go. So the UK government is reportedly weighing up the possibility of cutting planned funding for GB Energy, the state-owned company set up by Labour to drive renewable energy and cut household bills, in June's spending review. My energy bill went up this month, by the way. Well, no, actually. I fixed my prices for the next 18 months or something like that. Might have been 13. Because it's pretty obvious to me they're going to rise even higher. Cuts to the £8.3 billion of taxpayer money promised over a 5-year parliament would be another blow for Ed Miliband, the Energy Secretary. I want to point out again, £18 billion for the Mauritius deal. And they're still not accepting it, so that bill's probably going to go up again. I'm just pointing that out. Granted, it's over 99 years, however, they have said that most of that will be front-loaded payments, so take that as you will. After he was overruled by the government when the Chancellor Reeves backed the expansion of Heathrow's third runway, which obviously needs to be built. GB Energy, a vital cog in Keir Starmer's plan to supercharge Britain's clean energy revolution, was only given an initial £100 million in October's budget to cover its first 2 years. Ministers are carrying out a zero-based review of all government spending, which has been given additional impetus after Starmer pledged to boost investment in defence. Which, again, it was defence policy that is, once again, emulating Reform's defence policy. We literally may as well have just voted in Reform. We wouldn't have had all this embarrassing waste of money for the first 6 months before they start saying, maybe need a different tact here. One option under consideration by the Treasury is to cut the £3.3 billion earmarked for GB Energy to fund low-interest loans via local authorities for projects such as solar and shared ownership wind projects, according to the Financial Times. A Treasury spokesperson said, "We are fully committed to the £8.3 billion for GB Energy, which is at the heart of our mission to make Britain a clean energy superpower and to ensure our homes are cheaper and cleaner to run." Sources played down the likelihood of the government significantly defunding an initiative that formed an important plank of Labour's energy strategy. They're just considering cutting £3.3 billion to it. I mean, £3.3 billion might not be fully cut, sure, but still, even cutting like half of that is still quite a large amount, considering that the overall commitment was £8.3 billion. What are they expecting here? Are they expecting such massive growth from giving out loans to solar panels and wind farms that's going to end up generating the money to pay for itself yet again? I don't know why they'd expect that, because all of these projects always need subsidies. In fact, it is a subsidy for a project. You don't need to subsidise projects that are growing. One source suggested that the government might maintain the promised level of funding, but rebadge the budget of other green initiatives to become part of GB Energy, effectively allowing departmental cuts in other areas. Hilarious. The speculation will, however, reignite rumours of a power battle within the Labour ranks pitched between Number 10, the Treasury, and Miliband's Net Zero department. Last year, before Labour's election victory, Starmer cut its green investment plan from $28 a year to $15 billion a year in a blow to Miliband. And now it's being cut even further because it turns out net zero is no longer popular. You know, Just Stop Oil, Extinction Rebellion, they won. But it was a really short-term win because now everyone hates them and everyone is pretty much happy to hear, oh, cuts to green energy subsidies? Great. Love that. My energy bills are getting ridiculous. Please just drill. But apparently this civil war is very much in the Treasury's favour, which is now running the rule over everything before the spring statement this month, because obviously I think they saw what was coming. Because this was written a week ago, and they saw what was coming this week. They will have known that GDP numbers and early reports will have been bad from the ONS about GDP, and so they'll have already been preparing for this. This is why news of this is coming out a week ago, because they'll know this all in advance of when it's actually public. And they're panicking. They're panicking because of stuff Reform and the right wing were saying this is stupid about. Turns out it is. Why are people going to Reform? Because they're correct. Which is expected to show that Reeves' headroom against her fiscal rules has been wiped out, when we already knew that. Another source warned of a rerun of the febrile months before the autumn budget, when swirling speculation hit business confidence and investment. Well, yeah, the Labour point was, well, this country just sucks, doesn't it, eh? Why would anyone make a business here? And then businesses were like, oh, okay, we won't then. And then the number of businesses fell in the UK, so well done. GB Energy has the potential to be a real confidence booster to business. Scaling it back would damage investor sentiment and frankly be electoral madness. It's usually popular on the doorstep, especially in Scotland, they said. Oh, of course it would be. Last month, GB Energy admitted it could take 20 years to meet its pledge to employ 1,000 people. What is the point of GB Energy? 1,000 people? Well, I suppose it's just there to coordinate projects, actually. You probably don't need that many people. However, if it's already looking like the budget of it is going to be cut, I can't see it living very long. As the chair, Jürgen Mayer, refused to put a date on when it would bring down energy bills. And that's because they can't, because when Ed Miliband did his own report where he marked his own homework, as I did for my own video, it turned out that the only way that energy bills actually go down is in worst case scenario, i.e. Russia start going gloves off and start invading Poland or something, which obviously affects the global gas market. In the current trends future prediction, it would actually be cheaper to not do any sort of renewable, and then in the best case scenario, it's actually, in other words, Russia have a peace deal, then what happens in that scenario is that it would be even cheaper to have not gone into net zero stuff. I did a whole video on it, this stuff was all predictable, I've been saying it for months. Just listen to me, I know what I'm talking about. Anyway, I think at this point you get the idea of all this. We are in a time where Britain's economic decline is now actually being unavoidable in the statistics. It's been known for quite a while, just by general vibes where everyone goes, that the economy really hasn't been doing work for an awful lot of people in this country. A large reason, taxes, regulation, spending being misallocated by the government, all the usual criticisms of the right. We have had this issue for decades at this point. And I largely blame it on Blair, also blame it on Cameron, and subsequent prime ministers, obviously. Starmer's come in, said he'll fix everything. No, he hasn't. And he was never going to. This was pretty much known by everyone who kept an eye on it on the right. I'm not particularly happy that my predictions have come true. I mean, obviously I'm happy in a way. But at the end of the day, this is my country that is being damaged from these decisions. Democracy is largely self-correcting. Back in the 70s, were things worse than that? I don't know. I'm having people that I am Twitter friends with, and in real life actually, basically say they don't think they've ever known the country to be in so much despair. They don't think they've ever seen it before, not even in the late 70s with the 3-day week and then obviously the winter of discontent. I covered it yesterday as well, Birmingham. Rubbish is being piled up in the streets. A dead body is not going to be buried next because that's what happened in the winter of discontent. You'd obviously hope that wouldn't happen, but with every economic direction, things aren't getting any better. It's very difficult for young people to buy houses. Opportunities just don't seem to be... Well, there are a lot of opportunities in London, sure, but they are very much just for achieving graduates. Opportunities for anyone else, they seem few and far between. This is all stuff that I talk about all the time, and a sentiment that seems to be reflected by an awful lot of people throughout the UK. As I say, the biggest issue I think with young people, really, that nobody's talking about is the amount that are genuinely thinking of leaving the country because they just don't see any future here. That's rarely talked about at all, and basically no politician seems to care, apart from, to be frank, Reform. So it's quite clear to me who the best option for any subsequent election is, unless, of course, the Tories can actually pull their finger out, there might actually be some decent competition. But unfortunately, that's just going to split the vote and keep Labour in with just this absolute disaster. So we'll have to see where it goes, obviously. But, well, for now, that's everything I had for you for today. So, shield time. Tomorrow, it is Laughing at the Guardian with some whamming. My lefty brother is coming on, and he is still of the opinion, as far as I'm aware, that Labour was still a better choice than the Tories, which I don't know how he's going to defend. But either way, it would be good to look forward to that. Monday, over on the Worcester Club, we'll finish off the Peloponnesian Wars, and then Tuesday, we will be doing a Tosh Talks, which reminds me, I need to do that poll. And if you want to be involved in the poll, simply join the Worcester Club with the link down below. If you would like to help out the channel, do subscribe, leave a like, leave a comment. Those are great and free ways to help out the channel. If you want to help out a bit more directly, you can always become a channel member and get access to all my old streams. Or, of course, you can leave a super thanks or super chat to any of my videos or streams that I run. Right, with that, that's everything I had for you for today. Once again, thank you very much for watching, and until next time, goodbye.